Hello and welcome back to the Cheltenham Exchange again, and to day 3 of our punters previews, where we've got another fantastic lineup of special guests who are going to analyse the day's racing for you. So kicking off things straight away, we've got the wonderful Dan Overall from The Jump Show, who's going to look at the Turner's Novice Chase. He'll be followed by Sam Martin, who's from Ryanair Racing and recently started at Silks magazine. Well done, Sam, who's going to analyse the Ryanair Chase for us. We've then got from Risk for Rewards Racing, the blog and YouTube channel, we've got Pete from Risk for Rewards, who's going to look at the Stayers Hurdle. Then the crazy man, GingerJoe from the GingerJoe Racing channel, who's going to analyse the Mare's Novice for us. And then to wrap things up for day 3, our very own Rainman, the boss, Ian Rayner, who's going to give you the winner of the King Muir. So enjoy the show, folks, and thank you to all the aforementioned.
Hello, Cheltenham fans. Dan Overall here of The Jump Show. Perhaps you know me off Tipstar or the Matchbook streams or one of the various sources online that I seem to pop up these days. But here I am previewing the Turner's Novice Chase. And to be fair, this kind of race does revolve around Mighty Potter. And there's a horse at the start of the season I didn't really warm to. I thought his Chase debut was that of a horse who may need another year. It looked a bit clumsy and a bit awkward to me, but my God, he's since proven me quite drastically wrong. I watched the Drymore back the other day, and it's so notable the way he just takes a pull after almost every fence. And he just looked in a different league that day and then backed it up with an emphatic display at the Dublin Racing Festival in a race I'm sure will always be fond for Gordon Elliott. Seeing his one charge pull well clear of the 5 Willie Mullins horses. Again, another impressive performance. And I guess if at this stage, if you're looking for reasons to crab him for Cheltenham, it would be the running Supreme last year. Although I think there's reasons to forgive that. He made a bad mistake at a vital stage, and the ground was very quick over 2 miles. He just wasn't ready for it at that stage of his career. He looks a more polished performer now. I'd be prepared to forgive him, and at this stage he looks a very worthy favourite. Although I think he will be coming up against a few interesting rivals. I think Banbridge obviously showed that he probably is 2 miles is on the sharp side for him. Definitely seemingly wants further to be at his best. Obviously was well behind him in the Mighty Potter in the Drymore. That was on softer ground. Better ground will help, but I'm not sure he's going to be able to close the gap, to be honest. Appreciate it would be a very interesting rival, and he looks pretty much nailed on to go here now. I guess the concern would be, it would be his first try over a trip further than 2 miles since his bumper, which obviously, and he looked like a horse has always wanted further than 2.5, but in the Irish Arca, he did tire notably towards the end. Admittedly, that was a very strongly run race, and there weren't exactly many horses finishing quickly, with the exception of El Fabiolo and Banbridge, who was from well off the pace and outpaced early. But I guess that would be a concern, whether he will really relish a strongly run 2.5 miles. It might just be an ask of him. But he would be probably the biggest test of Mighty Potter thus far if the Bang A game, Appreciate It, turns up. Of the British, I think Stage Star proved himself to be a worthy nominee for this race at Cheltenham in the handicap the other day. Jumped really well out in front. I think it was the first race he took on more than 2 rivals, but went out in front, jumped really well, and that was a really impressive performance at Trials Day. But the one who I think will run into a place and run really well is Balco Coastal. Now, going into this season, Nicky's 2 main hopes for the Novice Chase division were John Bon and Balco Coastal. Like, he was making noises earlier in the season that he was having to kind of campaign them separately to keep them apart. He rated them that highly, despite Balco Coastal not being anywhere near John Bon's level over hurdles. And there was an initial blip with Balco Coastal, not a great chase debut. Put that to one side at Kempton in a decent handicap. And then the next day in the Scilly Isles, really stepped forward again, chasing home Jerry Colomb, who I know a lot of other people are very keen for the Brown Advisory. Like, he put in a great performance that day. Hit the front probably a bit too soon. You watch that back, he jumped left all the way as well. Like, his Kempton win obviously came right-handed. That was right-handed at Sandown. I think going left-handed is definitely going to be a big help to him. Off a mark of 151 now, so I think they're just going to go down this route instead of the plate. Like, he's a really nice horse, and perhaps winning might be a stretch here. I think maybe a better winning opportunity will come at Aintree. I think it tends to be a more winnable race, but back left-handed, 2.5 miles, perhaps a bit more patiently ridden. I think I can definitely see Balco Coastal running into a place, but for win purposes, it's not original, I know, but I think Mighty Potter is going to be very hard to beat.
Hello, my name is Samantha Martin. I'm a journalist, writer, content creator, do some podcasts too, and I'm very excited to be here to talk to you about the Ryanair. And maybe a couple of weeks ago, this race would just have been pretty straightforward. It just would have been Allaho for the win. But unfortunately, he's been ruled out of the race. And literally, like on the 18th of February, the race just changed complexion entirely with Shishkin's really, really dominant performance in the Ascot Chase. It's so great to see that he's back. That race was over 2.5, so 2.4 around Cheltenham isn't going to be a problem. He's a 3 mile point to point winner, so even the hill at Cheltenham isn't going to. I don't think it's going to faze him. Obviously, he still has the option of the Cheltenham Gold Cup, and they could always supplement him for the Champion Chase, but I think that's a little bit more unlikely. So we'll just have to see which option he chooses. Fakir Dudery drifted right after finishing third to Shishkin from about 5-1 to about 16-1. He didn't go to Cheltenham last year, and I don't expect he'll go to Cheltenham this year, in all fairness. They'll probably save him for later on in the season. Pic Dory was the horse that came second, splitting those pair in the Ascot Chase, and I think he's actually quite an interesting horse. He's not ran at Cheltenham over fences yet. His last run there, I think, was in the Triumph Hurdle, that quite a few years ago now. He doesn't feel like he's been around for as long as he has. He's a really lovely horse, but perhaps maybe one for next year. Paul Nicholls did say before the race he is just kind of still growing into his frame. He strengthened up a lot before the Ascot Race, which is probably why he ran so well. And then Janadil entered the equation for the race with that performance at the weekend over in Ireland at Goring Park, because he goes so well fresh. And that's probably why he put in such a dominant performance, beating Horton Collier, who'd previously looked like he was going to win really nicely in a Grade 2 at Thurles when beating Fakir Dudery, but he fell, so in the end Fakir won. But I think Janadil and Shishkin would be my two selections in the race. Shishkin definitely, I know it's boring as he's the favourite, but I think he's a really super racehorse. He's obviously won the Arkle and the Supreme at Cheltenham. It'll be his first try on the new course, but I don't think it will faze him particularly much. But if he doesn't go, Janadil will be my selection.
Good afternoon, everybody. I am Pete, also known as @RiskForRewards, both on Twitter and on YouTube. And today I join you to hopefully give you a little bit of preview for the great group of lads over on the Cheltenham Exchange of the Stayers Hurdle. So thanks for having me, lads. I appreciate you asking me to do this today. And I'm going to just try and give a summary as quick as possible on a few of the leading hopes and who potentially could be the winner of this year's event. So I'm going to start from the outside. You've got the likes of the Goshens, the Zanahirs, and then to me, I find it very difficult to see them getting into this sort of market. So we keep going down, and then we're getting down to the lower figures. You've got Paisley Park, Admiral Horse, could well place, but obviously he's had plenty of chances and only third in this last year. Classical Dream fits pretty similar into the Paisley Park character, a little less unexposed, a younger horse. Does go well fresh, so we'll have his chance, but Willie's been very, not even 50-50 on whether he would take his chances. His actual words were, I wouldn't put money on it. So we'll see if he turns up. I have not found them win the last 2 years because I've taken Floor and Porter on the last 2 years. Because before the last 2 years, the front runners were 0 for 17. It was very unlikely. They weren't getting anywhere near winning the races. And obviously, he's absolutely dominated from the front twice in a row and proved me wrong. I did have a saver last year, so it wasn't quite so bad. I'm looking at the markets now, and he's 5-1. And I mean, he was around that sort of price last year, and he went in with much better form. Whereas this year, I know he's had his excuses, but he's just not for me. Again, I'll oppose him for the front runner's angle, and also I don't think he's in the same level of form. Last year, you could argue he was. This year, not so much. Marie's Rock, I'm not going to go into great depth, but it's just always worth bearing in mind. Willie Mullins had Annie Power, and he decided that the Stayers looked an easier race, so they stepped her up, and she got beat by more of that. We later found out that she was a champion hurdle horse, so she was the very top of the crop, but just not at that trip. And so Marie's Rock, if they decide to step her up, if she improves for it, brilliant, but it's a risk that you're willing to take, and not one that I'm going to take until I know that she's definitely running. Gold Tweet is being supplemented. Totally appreciate that. Downside is that race that he beat Dashel Drasher in was awful. And the fact Paisley Park didn't come off the bridle, it'll be nothing like a Stayers trial because it was slow ridden and then he just came off a very slow pace and absolutely bolted up. Has his chance, not for me right now. So onto the market leaders. Home by the Lee is the Admiral horse. It's not a new horse around the block, having finished 7.5 lengths off Floor and Porter last season. but looks improved this year, having won both the trials. On collateral form, in finishing ahead of meet and greet, finished 3 lengths ahead of that off level weights. But on the collateral, looking across to this year's favourite, Blazing Cow finished again 3 lengths ahead, but gave that rival £5. Home by the Lee will probably become the each way nice guy favourite, each way nice guy play, because they think he's just an admirable horse, continuous improver. So has his chance, but has got a bit to find with the front two. Front two, obviously, I'm not telling you anything you don't know because I'm going towards the head of the market. Tiupu for me, it's all about ground. If he gets his ground, he becomes a player. If he doesn't, he's going to find it difficult. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's a lot more difficult. In his last 9 runs, if you take away his 2 runs on good in the title, he would be 7 for 7. However, 33 length defeat in the champion hurdle behind Honeysuckle when Good's in the title. Obviously, this year he's looked very good, and he's arguably got the best piece of form when he beat Classical Dream and Honeysuckle. But he did have cut in the ground, and then he stepped up to 3 Mile, where I don't think we learnt a lot because they went at Dordal. The sexuals didn't come back great. He bolted up by 3 miles in 3 miles, but it was a very meh race. So he has his chance, but for me, I wouldn't be considering him unless he sees the soft ground. So that leaves us our Twitter horse that just about everyone seems to be on at a double figure price, and that's Blazing Cow. But I still wouldn't put anyone off the 3-1. The only concern would obviously be him making the race. But last year, he was electric over his hurdles, won his maiden, went to Cheltenham, 2 for 2 at Cheltenham, beating the Nichols horse, Gelino Bello, who backed that up with a Group 1 win in the Sefton. So the form is solid. He was a bit sticky at his jumps last year, but he was nothing of the sort when we saw him in the Boyne. He was smooth, he jumped well, he travelled well, he was everything you'd want in a stayers hurdle. And that, even just with that one figure that he's achieved there, that would put him bang in the mix for this. The fact that he gave £5 a meet and greet puts him on better forms than the third favourite, Home by the Lee, and he looks a real stayers horse. Of course, he's got the bounce factor because he's been off 428 days. But the season before last, he was off for 279 days. He won. Then 4 weeks later, came out and he won again. Charles Burns doesn't leave his money behind, and I think he'll know exactly where he's got this horse. He would have left a bit to work on, despite him being sharp and Connectors having a few quid by the looks of it very last minute. And I think Blazing Cow is the one that you want to be on for the Stayers Hurdle.
Hi all, GingerJoe here. Thank you to the Cheltenham Exchange boys for having me on. I'm here to give you my overview of the Grade 2 Mares Novice Hurdle on Thursday of the Cheltenham Festival. Now, this is a race over just shy of 2 mile 1 furlongs, and I'm very much looking forward to this race as well. We've got 2 really smart looking mares at the top of the market. We've also got some really intriguing runners a little bit further down the lineup as well. Probably none more so than Princess Zoe for Tony Mullins. She's a really smart mare, lovely horse, and you'd have probably known a little bit about her from the flat campaign that she's had. She's a Group 1 winner in Longchamp. She won the Prix de Cadran, and she also managed to win the Group 3 Sagaro Stakes 2, as well as finishing second at Royal Ascot in the Gold Cup. She's a really smart horse, and Tony Mullins has decided to change disciplines with her, and it looks like it might have been quite a smart decision. She did finish first on her first outing over hurdles, albeit this was a dead heat, but there's definitely a little bit of class about her, and she looked like she was learning on the job nicely. She is one that I think's open to improvement coming into this race, albeit I would think that I'd prefer to see her on a flatter track. I wouldn't like to see her come into Cheltenham on her second run expecting her to win. So I think the 20-1 price tag is probably about fair, but she could be an each way squeak, and she is open to any amount of improvement. Another horse at a bit of a price that I quite like is A Horse With No Name for Nicky Henderson. I'm pretty sure Ian's going to like this one too. 20-1 in the betting at the moment, second in this race last year to Love Envoi, and similarly taken a path to this race as well. Ran a nice prep race in December, freshened her up for the race this year, and she's probably going to come into this race open to a little bit of improvement and also entitled to go well. So ahead of the main dangers, I think A Horse With No Name at 20-1 could run a decent race again. But the 2 at the front of the market, Lucia and Ashrow Diamond, I do think are a little bit of a class apart to the remainder of the field. Lucia's been really impressive, winning at Newbury and Exeter so far, albeit jumping slightly poorly. I'm not totally convinced that she's a very good jumper yet, and I think she needs a little bit more time to get ahead of front of Ashrow Diamond, who I think at this point is a little bit ahead of her schedule. Now, she's run some really nice races so far. She finished 3rd to Facile Vega, 3rd to Marine Nationale before winning last time out in quite good fashion as well. A few things went wrong for her that day, but she was gritty, got her head down and managed to get the job done. At the moment, you're getting 7-4 for Lucia. You can have 3-1 for Ashrow Diamond. And I just think at this point, Ashrow Diamond is the one that's a little bit ahead of schedule. Albeit, I think Lucia is going to be the one to turn out to be the best of these. But at this stage, I think the campaign that Ashrow Diamond has taken towards the Mares Novice Hurdle is going to bode for her well on the day. I'd have liked to have personally seen another run from Lucia just to make sure that she's hardy enough for this race. And Cheltenham is not a place that you want to come to learn on the job. But Ashrow Diamond has been campaigned from the beginning of this season, prepped throughout the season, coming to Cheltenham, and I think she could be the one that takes all the beating at 3-1. I do think Lucia is a very good horse, but maybe one for next season. I do understand the hype. She's quite flashy, but for me, Ashrow Diamond gets the job done in the Mares Novice Hurdle at 3-1. Thank you everyone for watching. Thanks to the Cheltenham Exchange boys. Don't forget to subscribe to their channel. Thanks for having me on. See you all soon.
Hello everyone, it's Ian Rayner here. Rain Man or Boss Man or whatever I'm called these days. The race I've been given for the Cheltenham Exchange Punter preview is the GingerJoe. My pick is going to be Am I Right? Currently around about 14-1 best odds. I'll just give you a bit of background in regards to Am I Right? Won first time out chasing at Fairyhouse over 2 miles 5, beating the other Henry Bromhead horse, Secret She Keeps, in the Rob Core colours, who then went on to win next time out at Furless. Then the next few races, Am I Right, slowly went up in trip. It was third behind Darren's Hope and Milena Crooner at Punchestown. Milena Crooner went on to win their next race at Fairyhouse in early December. Then Am I Right was at Leopardstown over 3 miles at Christmas. Sadly had an unseat. In the race, Galliard de Menil was first and Churchstone Warrior was second. And obviously Churchstone Warrior went on to win at Navan last week and is now a big contender for the National Hunt Chase. And then last time out, Am I Right was in another controversial race, this time over 3 mile 1 at Nice, was beaten into third by the Devil's Coachman and Ramleys. And if you remember, this was the race where the result was overturned and the Devil's Coachman won the race. And you could see coming up to the last where all three of them seemed to bump and bash each other. Ramleys was had blocked off the Devil's Coachman, and Am I Right was bumped and basically caused a bit of a bad jump at the last, and ultimately cost the race and was beaten about 6 attempts between the other two. Now, Am I Right currently has an Irish mark of 138. And if you give or take about English tax around about 4 points or 5 points, I would say you probably get about 142. I believe the longer trip of 3 mile 5 will suit Am I Right and does look a stayer. And I believe that potentially Conor Brazil could be the amateur jockey to get the ride and could take another £5 off. So that's my selection for the GingerJoe. Am I Right? Just wanted to give a big thank you to all our guests who contributed to our Day 3 Punter preview. Big thank you to Dan Overall, Samantha Martin, Pete from Risk or Rewards, and Mr. African Sunset himself, GingerJoe. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for future content to which you don't want to miss.